My name is Emmanuel, Jesu, Champion, and welcome back to Champion Studios. Thank you for joining for part 1 of my testimony, and as promised, this will be part 2 in a question and answer format. Let's jump right in. Let's see what the first question is here. Is that your real name, Emmanuel, Jesu, Champion? Yes, it is actually my real name. My last name, actually, I recently changed it last year in 2020. Before I talk about my last name, my first name was given to me by my grandmother on my mother's side. And I was able to talk with her fairly recently in regard to why she named me Emmanuel, and then my middle name is Jesus without the S. And then when I met the African community here in Maine, I realized that that's the way many of the countries in Africa say Jesus. They say it without the S, Jesu or Jesu. So my name is Emmanuel, God with us, Jesu, Son of God, and Champion. I'm blessed to have such a name. Always throughout my life, it was something that kept me out of some of the worst situations growing up in the neighborhoods that I did. My name oftentimes kept me away from doing compromising things, literally because of my name. Even before I knew the Lord, I knew that my name was very strong and I valued seeking to live up to it. So my grandmother who named me from my mother's side, I want to thank you for the name in which you have given me. And lastly, my last name, Champion. My original last name was O'Neill. Interesting story about my original last name, O'Neill. My father and my mother, when they first met, their last names were the same, spelt differently. My mother's last name is spelled O''Neal, O'Neill, and my father's last name was spelled O''Neale at the end. But they had the same last name. So my last name, what it used to be, O'Neill, it wouldn't matter whether I took it from my mother or my father. I was a double O'Neill. And I decided during the time period of 2020 and all of the chaos that was taking place with the race issue and the current climate of the race issue, I decided that I wanted to distinguish myself and separate myself from the history of slavery in my ancestry. O'Neill is not an African name. It's not a black person's last name. O'Neill is actually an Irish last name, which symbolized that my ancestors had been at one time slaves to Irish people, and they were renamed O'Neill as a symbol of possession. Oftentimes when the slaves were bought by families, their slaves would receive their name as their possession. And O'Neill is clearly from that time period when my ancestors were slaves. Because of that, and because of the racial tension that is going on in this world currently, I decided to change my last name as a symbol of freeing myself from the branding of a history that when I found Christ, the scriptures say, if the Son make you free, then you're free indeed. And I'm no longer a slave in this world, a slave to sin, a slave to unrighteousness. When we find Christ, Christ makes us servants and children of his Father who is in heaven. And I'm blessed to have been able to change my last name legally to Champion. I'll also add that I didn't just choose that name randomly and just say, well, I want to be named Champion. No, if you go and look up the word O'Neill and look up what does O'Neill mean, you'll see that the word O'Neill or the last name O'Neill actually means champion. And the word champion is also the same word from the book of Judges, which means judge. And I thought that was very interesting, but when I changed my name to Champion, I didn't actually change the meaning of my name. I simply changed the spelling and changed the baggage from my ancestry linked to slavery. And that was something that I thought was important for me to do in life. And that's how I have the name Emmanuel, Jesu, Champion. Next question. How did you get into videography and cinematography work? Well, when I was young, I grew up in a household with a father who was very, 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 very involved with technology. As a matter of fact, my father is the first Black internet service provider in the world. And growing up with a father who was so heavily invested in technology, you know, growing up we had Nintendo and all the video games, all the computers, but our Nintendo, when you turned it on and it pops up on the screen all the games. While everybody's putting cartridges in, we turn ours on and all the games are already on the screen. So I've always been in this environment where it was really, really technologically advanced. My dad taught me how to build computers, and I built my first computer. I had to be around the age 6 or 7, and I built my first website when I was about 14, 15 years old. It was a website where I used to be involved in multiplayer games, and I would play games like Quake and Unreal and Doom back in the day when those sorts of games first came out. And I made a website where people can come and challenge me to a one-on-one multiplayer game, and I built my first website at 14, 15 years old. Also, my father was very much into camera equipment as well. Every time there was a family function or something like that, you'd find my father snapping away pictures somewhere at all points. And he's archived now hundreds of thousands of pictures, I'm sure. So I've seen my dad involved in technology, involved in cameras, involved in things of that nature. And I build computers today. I build websites today, and I'm involved in camera work today as well. So I can safely say that a lot of these talents and a lot of my passion for this stuff is innate to me from my teaching growing up through my father. And now that I get to use these talents for my Father in heaven and for His work, I'm greatly blessed to have learned these things and watching my dad, my earthly father, growing up. Cinema, I really enjoy it because I get to, growing up in English class, I used to be teacher's pet in a lot of classes. Like I said, I was at the top of my class in most of my school history. And in English class, the teacher really loved me because I like storytelling, and they thought that I was really good at storytelling and really good at poetry and things of that nature. So I always loved the concept of storytelling, voice narration, and things of that nature, like watching nature shows with David Attenborough in his voice, or a Samuel L. Jackson voice over a documentary, or things of that nature. Kind of like really, I like that type of creative, inspiring vibe of things, if you will. So me being able to do cinematography with the talents of storytelling and poetry and things of that nature, I'm in heaven merging these two talents together, writing and visual storytelling. And I get to do this in harmony with presenting the gospel. There's nothing more exciting to me than doing the work that I'm doing now with cinematography and ministry. And my first project I've ever did cinematography-wise was done about 9 years ago when I was living in Pennsylvania, 10 years ago. And it was at a time period where I was going through some issues in my family life. And I had left the house and I went out into the wilderness and into the woods. It was daylight, and I went into the woods and I wanted to spend some time with God, to be revived, to be restored, to be refreshed. And I sat down on a rock there in the middle of the woods, and I just began to look around and see all the wonderful things that were taking place around me. And in that environment, I penned some words that I believe captured the experience of meeting with God and nature. And why don't I share my first ever project, videography project, with you? It's simply pictures to a poem. Here it is.
On a wilderness journey, I had met with him, the one who came to die for sin. He sacrificed himself for the heathen, the fallen. He said, Emmanuel, in a small whisper, and I heard his calling. Yes, here I am, Lord. In silence I wait. He said, stand, son, and march through the gates. Though you have done much that our Father doth hate, you are my brother. I have died in your place. You have been forgiven and granted grace through faith. Stand, son, march through the straight and narrow gates. But despair and depression have filled my heart. I have closed my eyes to the light and have created my own dark. He ministered unto me and said, let there be light. He penetrates the darkness and restoreth my sight. Though my wings may be broken, he sets things aright. A wounded bird in the wilderness, ready for flight. He brings me higher and higher, much like a kite. The sun is setting, and thus brings the night. Lord, if I come again tomorrow, you will still be here, right? I will never leave nor forsake you. He smiles and then sighs. Remember this promise, and you will grow wise. He is the light of my life, though all may be dim. I praise him and thank him for the forgiveness of sin. His voice like a whisper, or was it just the wind? On a wilderness journey, I had met with him.
Yeah, so that was my first project, and when I did it, I thought it was wonderful in the sense of I got to express myself in such a creative way and kind of do a videography project where I'm taking pictures and putting them to lines of poetry. And if you looked in the beginning, when you see that flare effect and let there be light, you know, I thought that was like, you know, the best CGI ever. I was showing people, look at this, you know. And now that I look at it, I'm just like, you know, what is that? But that was my first videography project. After that, I did a short documentary for a band in Maine called Channels of Blessing. And after that, I jumped directly into LOUDCRY Media and those 5 videos that I shot. My style of learning is auditory. So me, I'm a person who, if somebody's speaking, that's how I learn. I can retain 75, 80% of a presentation that's shared with me. So because of that, I think that it gave me a advantage during school. And when I go to YouTube and I'll look at how to lay floor, or how to frame a wall, or how to do electric work, I can go and learn those things within a matter of minutes, and then go and apply them in such a way where somebody will look at the work and think that a professional did it. I've done a lot of auditory learning in connection with camera work, in connection with videography, in connection with home building, and applying this with the spiritual gifts that God has given me and the talents that God has given me is an absolute blessing. So I'm thankful for media, and I'm thankful for gospel work. Next question. You talked about when you was younger, you wanted to be a superhero. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Yes. When I was younger, I really did want to be a superhero. That's not just me narrating. As I'm doing my father's business and things of this nature, I'm not going to be shooting movies and things of that nature. No, documentaries, real life things. And when I speak, I'm sharing the truth of what I've been through. And so, yes, when I was younger, I wanted to be a superhero. I read a lot of comic books, Spider-Man, Superman, Batman, Spawn, things of that nature. But my absolute favorite superhero was Wolverine and the X-Men, but Wolverine specifically. I remember laying in bed one day, and I was praying and asking God to become a superhero. I wasn't a Christian at the time, but I was always spiritual. I was never an atheist in my life. I always believed that there was a creator. And I was laying there in my bed, and I was praying that God would make me a superhero, that God would make me Wolverine. And I'm praying, I have my eyes closed, and I'm praying. And I opened my eyes, and I have, such extreme faith at the time where I expected, shing, claws to come out of my hands, but obviously that did not happen. But I always had this childlike belief and faith. So when the Lord grabbed me up, he just increased that and uses that faith and increases it to have for his kingdom. And I enjoy having a very childlike faith. Interestingly enough, when I was younger, I wanted to be a superhero, and I found myself praying and asking God to be a superhero. But surely the God of Israel is an answerer of prayers, because I believe that when a person is born again, when a person becomes a believer, when a person is gifted with the Holy Spirit, that the person receives gifts, supernatural abilities, which are found in the scriptures. And in that sense, I believe that a truly born again believer is in fact a genuine superhero. And I believe that our job, our duty, our mission is to go out into the world and save people from the hands of the enemies, of the villains, of the demons, the devil, from their own sin and from the world. And I'm so happy that God answered my prayer in my later life. And now today I can say I am a superhero because I'm a Christian, a minister, and I'm seeking and I'm saving the lost. Secondarily, if I was to waste all my time and energy going to school and things of that nature, what would I have wanted to go to school for that today I would be happy that I went to school for? There's two things. There would be architecture and also cinematography, videography, film. And interestingly enough, I have not just been born again so I can claim the rights and prerogatives of a superhero. I can also say that after leaving New York City and moving into the country, that the Lord has placed talents and abilities and trades in my hand where I can build a house with my own hands. And obviously, I'm also deeply interested and invested in cinematography today as well. So I got to be a superhero, I got to be an architect, and I get to be a director. Truly, the God of Israel is an answer of prayers, and I am blessed and in heaven where the Lord has me and how he wants to use me in his cause. Next question. You said you were involved in hip-hop prior to your conversion. When you were converted, did you write any music as a Christian? Well, yes, I did. I wrote one track as a Christian, but even in writing it, I've still experienced kind of, because I just came out of that type of industry and that lifestyle, it was too close to my old man for me. So I was convicted that that form of music was no longer something that I would engage in, because it attached me back so close. It's almost like a person who overcomes being an alcoholic. You shouldn't spend time in a bar. You shouldn't go to bars if you just overcame being an alcoholic, in other words. So I had to take a far step away from music. I do currently still write music every now and then, but it's not hip hop, it's not rap. I might write something, a song or some poetry that could be sang or things of that nature. But my first Christian, I don't even know if I can say these two words together, but I'll say it for the sake of saying it. My first Christian rap was done in my first month after my conversion. And I'm going to share that with you. Here it is.
Yahweh, Yahweh, forgive me, forgive me. Yahweh, Yahweh, forgive me. Lord, I thank you for your presence and your word and your passion and your pain. There's a fire burning inside, Jesus pumps through my veins, I'm changed. So I must glorify your name. If it's best to give, then let me give for a change, a living sacrifice. A life for a life, but the sad part is, it still ain't the same. So you could have the mansion, the money, women in range. My Lord, you would not die in vain. These times in society seem so insane. So I isolate myself, the whole world needs change. Revival, sin got man living deranged, abomination. Satan got the world enslaved. Everybody gangster, not one of them brave. But they all know you, but not one of them saved. The path straight and narrow, and so is the gate. So drunk searching for you, they can't walk straight. Pump your brakes, bow down, can't write your own fate. Self-justified people ain't righteous, they fake. The heart's deceitfully wicked, in control of your brain. Surrender or be punished for your sinister ways. And seek the word of God and let his law minister ways. There ain't no loopholes, I pray you see the truth on the page. He died for me every day, gon' cry and beg. Sin disgusts me, Lord, I die for your name. It's blasphemy to clap for me, this is Jesus' fame. So clap at me and I die glorifying his name. And if I live, then I die glorifying your name.
So there it is. That was my first and only Christian rap, if you will. And you can tell by the tone in which I was rapping that I was fresh out in a sense, but also you can also be able to get an idea of the tone in which I had on the trains when I was preaching as well. When I was preaching really, hard, sermons and presentations there in New York City amongst a very hearted crowd of people at times. So I would not be able to go back to the New York City trains and preach the way that I formerly preached, because through Christian maturity and character development, becoming more and more like Christ as time progresses, there's just certain things you don't go backwards to. But I believe that God used that time period in my life mightily to speak to New Yorkers in a very New York style of way. And I'm blessed by the experience as well. Next question. In the first testimony video, we were privileged to see 5 of your children, but you said you have more. How many children do you actually have? Well, currently I have 10 children. Somebody said, what did that brother just say? I have 3 orphans in Uganda, being taken care of by one of the other ministers who is part of this ministry, My Father's Business, and his family. They're in Uganda. He's taking care of 3 of the orphans. And also I have 6 biological children, but 7 7 children who I say are my children, my babies. 6 biological, 1 stepdaughter, that the world coined stepdaughter. I call her my daughter, and in my heart she will never be anything other than my daughter. I raised her since she was 6 months old, all the way to the time period of pretty much now, and that's my sweet Chloe. And I will never call her anything other than my daughter. So I have 7 children, 6 biological, 7 children, and then 3 orphans in Uganda, a total of 10 children. And as time progresses, maybe I'll introduce you to the rest of them, and me and them can get involved in doing some things. In the next video, I'll share some of the things that we're looking forward to as father and children as well. Next question. Okay. You mentioned something about symbolism and innuendos from the first video with the purple shirt and the second video with juniors. Can you shed some light on what you meant? Well, this subject matter is still a bit of a touchy subject for me, and rightfully so, because the purple shirt was symbolism of the first ministry that I was called by God to raise up with my family, LOUDCRY Media. That was me, my wife at the time, and my children. And you can watch the video and see what that was all about. And that purple shirt that I used in the parable of a superhero was symbolic of that time period, that era, that ministry. And also, juniors is the place in which I met my children's mother. Yeah, this is where I met her. So here we have the ministry that I was involved with my children's mother in, and the place in which I met my children's mother.
Thank you for calling Junior's Cheesecake. Due to the current situation, we're closed indefinitely. Sorry for the inconvenience.
So those two things merged together, and my first part of the testimony was symbolic of a closing of an era in my life and the beginning of something new. Interestingly enough, in the first LOUDCRY Media video that I did with my children's mother and my children, the last thing I say in that video, which I didn't know when I believe God had unctioned me to raise up My Father's Business, the last thing I say in the LOUDCRY Media video back in 2014, the last words I say is, I pray that we'll cry together, that we'll smile together, that we'll share together as we do our Father's business. Now that I'm a director of My Father's Business, as I reviewed that video again, I was very surprised again at the providential working of God to do these sorts of things. It's very amazing to me how he works to bring about his perfect will. So that was what the purple shirt was about, and juniors was about, and that's the tie together that phase in my life has come to a sad and sorrowful close. And maybe I'll talk a little bit more about that in other presentations later, in connection with marriage or different things of that nature. But for now, I think I've said enough. Next question. The next questions will deal with my calling, but I will put this in a separate, third, special testimonial video in which I will call Nehemiah. Shall a man such as me hide myself? Thank you for joining for part 1 and 2 of my testimony. I pray you was thoroughly blessed. For my next video, I will be sharing with you the various aspects of what we do here at the ministry, My Father's Business. If you want to reach out to us, call us at 1844 LOUDCRY or visit us online at MyFathersBusiness.Org. Thank you again from Champion Studios and My Father's Business.